Hey, it's your main man, Mega. You are tuned into another exciting episode of the Vintage House Show. And we are the show that is normally broadcast on WNUR 89.3 FM and then HD1. But here in 2020, we are set with the at-home edition of the Vintage House Show. Joining me are co-founder of the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation, the curator of the Vintage House Show, and I call her the super duper producer, Lauren Lowry.
What up? Thank you, our main man, Mega Kevin McFall. Thanks for being on the show. Lori may pop in a little bit later today, correct? We think?
Yes, Lori, we will hope to see her tonight as she co-hosts the show and many incredible episodes of Vintage House. This is the premier on-air radio show and podcast dedicated to illuminating and preserving the lives, the music, the careers, and the history of house music pioneers. And we are powered by the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation, which is the only repository in the United States dedicated solely to the study, the preservation, and the celebration of the genres of house and dance music. Our mission, very important, is to preserve the memories and memorabilia that support the sustainability of this culture we call and love, known as house.
Thank you. Thank you, Mega. That was very well said. That was very well put.
It is our purpose and how we tee up every show on the Vintage House Show.
Yeah, except for when we have like 19 people on and with the electronics are bad, technology's bad. They were like, look, we on the show. What's up? You know?
We just get right into it. We put our foot in it.
So, I mean, I'm so happy that we're able to sort of have this conversation. Are we on? Are we on live? Do you know if we're on live?
Yes.
All right, okay.
Reggie Davenport, it's already checked in.
Okay, very good.
4 other audience members and climbing.
Okay, well, very good. So I definitely want to see Mr. Davenport's point of view on this too. I'm sure he's going to have a few things to say. But, I think the point of the show, really, it's pre-holiday. We wanted to make this a relaxed show, but something that we should tackle. I mean, Vintage House is really about the study of what's happened in the past to bring us to this moment. But we also want to tackle the future. We don't want to be speaking about a music genre that is no longer being admired or celebrated or preserved. We don't want this to be something that we're talking about that used to occur, that was a part of Chicago dance music history. We want to talk about the future. And this is an unprecedented time across the board for everyone. And we've seen some pivots. We've also we're concerned also about the future of the club, the future of the DJ, the future of the music. What are some of the successful pivots? What are people doing? This is a business. We operate out of passion to a certain degree here, but this is a business. There's a lot of people who are making a lot of money and living their lives on the progression of this music to live their lives, to feed their families. Some people just do it as a passion. It may be a second career, but I'm concerned about, some of these clubs. How are they going to survive in this pandemic? This is, again, a business and an industry. And I think it would be a mistake for us not to talk about this a little bit as we talk to our guests a lot about sort of their futures, what they're doing next. I think it's good for us to sort of take a quick break before the holiday here and think about how the industry is going to survive. Is the drive-in the only thing we're going to be able to do, or sort of what are the things that are next? That's next, not just post-COVID right now. Like, what's next? What is going to be the successful play to keep people employed, to keep people continuing to create and make the music? I just really wanted to think about some of those things and maybe talk to our friends and our colleagues and our viewers about what they thought, what they think about it. Are
I
you
think this is a critical thing to pause and reflect on. And you alluded to the fact that we do ask some of our guests over the course of our seasons, what they're doing. If you look back on our shows, of course, if you go to vintagehouse.com, you can download some of those past episodes and listen to them or view them on our Vintage House Facebook page. A lot of people have adapted, right? They, whether it's through virtual sessions, creating similar shows to the Vintage House show, going outdoors, which in Chicago, of course, is a very limited window for that opportunity. And then even in some cases, there have been small gatherings within nightclubs, hosting events that are then also virtually broadcast. So I think adapting, being chameleons is one theme that has really permeated through this pandemic. Being innovative. That's how I would respond to this.
Well, I think clearly everyone has to be innovative right now. So you have to think about that. So I want to start number one with the club. So the House Music Club is something, or just the music club in general, not just Chicago, but globally. I'm looking to see what Europe is doing in this climate, looking to see what some of our colleagues in other cities, what is New York doing? What is LA doing? How are people able to survive? How are the club owners able to survive? What we saw here, one of the things that really caught my attention was Nocturnes, and which has become a very popular place for DJs to create, to be seen, to be heard. And it's only been around a small amount of time. They did a GoFundMe drive, which I think they're still doing to survive. And I think now they're back open with maybe a limited, it wasn't a big place to begin with, but with a limited number of people, I believe. What do you think about a GoFundMe for the club? Is that sustainable, or what do you think about that?
I don't think it's sustainable. I think it is a move that certainly takes advantage of what we see across a variety of businesses and other entities that are, looking for an infusion of cash. I don't know, but I must assume that some of the other events and activities that are being produced out of Le Nocturne are providing some revenue, but certainly the overhead of rent and employees and lighting and all of those things that require what we call in the world of business right there, fixed expenses versus variable. These things require the beast has to be fed, as they say. And so a GoFundMe campaign is one way to feed that beast, but I don't think it is sustainable.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I haven't heard much from, some of the more popular clubs, let's say in our, sort of group of colleagues. Renaissance, has that opened? What do you see or what do you hear sort of on that scene? If our guests know sort of what some of these clubs are doing, please chime in. Let us know your thoughts. What is that pivot? I know they did open an outdoor space in the rear of that property. Have you seen or heard anything about sort of if Renaissance is back on? Have we heard from Rhonda Flowers, any of the key people who use those venues?
We're here every Wednesday, and some of those folks tune in with us. Certainly those who are tuned in tonight, we ask you to join us and comment on the Vintage House page. We'll pick up those comments and include your points of view and perspectives on air. Tyrone and Reggie and Kevin Abdullah are all tuned in. What's up, Kevin? My namesake. I don't know if you remember from the good old days of the high school days. I was the lesser known Kevin, but I certainly recognize and respect Kevin Abdullah and his crew. No one has provided perspective, Lauren, and I have been very much a home body. I'm here in the mega cave of my home. But I do know Renaissance does have that outdoor space. I just don't know if it's been active as of late. And I know that the ownership there is certainly respectful of life and right. And the ability to preserve life and keep people from being sick. So I think it's a viable option. You still have to be socially distanced, and it just doesn't feel the same. Socialization has fundamentally changed. No matter how even in those outdoor drive-in theater environments and the baseball fields. I think there was an event in Detroit recently. I did see some footage of that, and people had a good time, but it was limited interactions and such.
Yeah, I'm curious about whether or not we can, certainly in the foreseeable future. I think even in 2021, we're going to have some concerns, whether you have a vaccine or not, about being so close together. And so when I think about not just, sort of clubs in Chicago, when I look around, Promontory has booked guests for later this fall. Lil Jon was on Lil Jon Coleman, Lil Jon has been on several times. He was discussing some of the events that he was having in the South suburbs. So some of the South suburban places are open. The problem with Chicago, as I see it, is sustainability as we become, as we go into the winter months. I mean, we can't be outside forever. And I think the outside flow definitely is great. But at what point do we start to think about, whether or not we're going to be, it's almost like the restaurant industry, which I'm, sort of uniquely involved in as well. It's like we can eat outside right now, but in the wintertime, what are we going to be able to do? Is that something that we're going to, how are these clubs going to pivot? How is Persona going to pivot? How is M Lounge going to pivot? How are these venues going to survive? And what does that mean? Does that mean, clearly places like M Lounge, they house lots of different music types, etc. But it's a small venue in the first place, and then you can only get 25 or 50% of your capacity in there. What do then they have to do with those spaces to make money? Again, I'd like to hear some sustainable ideas or things that have been successful in the past. And I'm wondering, like in 9/11, at some point everyone stopped moving. We think about history. People stopped moving. People weren't going out to the club, you know what I mean? Even though I'm sure people did, but there's a point in our history where a lot of people stopped doing a lot of things. And clearly it was something that we recovered from. That was one state, one city that had a massive amount of deaths and violence, but other places sort of slowed down. We couldn't travel as much, but things, we could ramp ourselves back up again. I'm wondering if there's any other sort of historic, things that occurred in the past to give us some insight on how this recovery, could happen. Because these club owners, who many of which we know, we want them to survive. I'm sure they're thinking about how they are able to do that. But I'm wondering if there are any success stories, or has anyone thought about how they're going to make this kind of thing work?
So it would be good to reach out to some of those folks for either later in this show or for future episodes to really get a deep dive on their perspective. I'm sure they'd be willing to share insights. One of the things I've also noted, there are a lot of virtual platforms coming to fruition around supporting venue owners, such that they're all-in-one systems enabling event producers to go into these venues, to conduct live streams, to have ticketing capabilities so that you can actually sell tickets. And then some of the venues, I believe Chicago in particular, had an ordinance that was allowing for carry-out beverages, such that pre-made, pre-mixed cocktails, which is, as we all know, is a big component of the revenue stream for a club, enabling them to be able to do some of that. But again, nothing is going to compare to what it's like having a full club. I can remember being in Renaissance many times as one example of a venue where it was shoulder to shoulder, and getting a drink at the bar was a labor exercise in real patience and persistence. Without that, these venues are really going to struggle. There's no question.
I mean, I like what sort of some of that pivot was. We're going to go do a GoFundMe, or maybe we're going to have some ticketed, sort of virtual events, that kind of thing. And you wonder, are people going to chime into that? I will say that, so I didn't invite my best friend Wendy to come on the show, but my best friends, Wendy and Lori, were recognized that without the house music online, sorry for the background noise, without the house music online, they would have really suffered March, April, May. They so appreciated, the DJs coming online. As I sort of shift the conversation a little bit to the DJs, they loved having Vince Adams online. They loved having, the guys out of New York and the other, oh gosh, I can't remember all the DJs' names who became nationally known for having these live music all-nighters,
Well, yeah, D-Nice was
D-Nice, etc. Yeah. We all really enjoyed that. And then you wonder, is that, again, the sustainability of that kept us alive March, April, May. And then I think we start to see we're going to shift, and we're going to do the GoFundMe, the Cash App, the PayPal, all those different things at the bottom of our screens. And I'm wondering, how some of these, how some of them went. What happened. Did they earn enough money to become, do they think this is something they could do forever, or that kind of thing. My friend had an event where she hired one of our major DJs in Chicago for her sorority, and she said she did just the digital, the virtual event, and they raised something over $10,000. So I'm like, that is really interesting. So then could the DJ just simply put the Cash App on there, and every time they do a show, just ask for, that, and then sustain themselves to the tune of $10,000 a night? I mean, that sounds like an unbelievable idea. Like if that could happen, that would be fantastic. But I'm always wondering too, like whether or not they were able to, can you do that week after week? Is that something that can be done? So, just I'm curious about that. I'm not looking at comments, but at some point, where do you stop, doing the Cash App on the bottom because it becomes less and less, or is that something that we will see forever? Will we always see that? Even if they're at a venue, you could be on the Cash App and say, hey, donate a few dollars, if you like. So I'm wondering if any one of the DJs have seen that this is really something that is a positive, and that, they think they should be doing a lot if they can do it all the time.
So it's interesting. Some of our audience is chiming in. Tyrone Mix, a soon to be guest back on Vintage House, says, if you're healthy and under 65, stop hiding at home, he says.
So, I mean, that's a great comment as we did sort of also talk about the house head, the dancer. Do people feel like they would be risking their lives trying to go to the club, or would they feel more comfortable at an outdoor venue like the drive-in, where you're sort of partying just with your friends or in a small sort of circle, even though there's lots of other people around and you're socially distanced? I mean, there's so many people, certainly in our community, that are compromised health-wise. Do you want them to be in a situation, under 65 or not, where they could be putting themselves at risk? Sort of understanding that we don't have any remedies for this disease and we don't have any vaccines at all. So, you wonder, are you going back to the club? Like, will you be back when Renaissance opens back up? Let's say they say like Promontory. I believe Promontory is opening in September. They will have shows in September or October. Are you going to be at the club, Mega?
I will not be. I'm actually doing some things and caring for others, and certainly can't afford to catch nor spread COVID, the flu, or any of those things right now. I think there's a different time and different circumstance where I would have the greater autonomy or flexibility, but it's not now, and it won't be anytime in the next few months for me. But, this is an individual circumstance and condition, I think, and certainly the decisions that individuals make, that remains their own ability, right, to make those choices. And until we, acquiesce to the impending one world order that the current administration is trying to subject us to, we are independent thinkers, we are independent actors, and we have the ability to, perform and behave accordingly. So, I encourage people to continue to do what they feel is the right thing and be altruistic. That's my point of view.
Well, let's think about it from several points of views. I mean, there's a middle-aged crowd, there's a millennium crowd, there's an even younger crowd. And there's a lot of us who have responsibilities to others across the board, whether we're interacting with people at work, if we're going back to work in our independent workplaces, our families, etc. And again, they were saying, before, globally, the young people, the 20-year-olds, etc., were out partying, and they become super spreaders. I mean, they're out here, they're partying, they're enjoying themselves, they're listening to the music, enjoying the music, and then you end up infecting other people. So at some point, I think if we're thinking about what we're going to do to be responsible to others around us, going to the club could be difficult. Now, might there be a venue that is outdoors, maybe tented up with some air coming through, all winter, that people will go to? I think, that's just something I'm curious about. Like, how does the general house head of any age, do they expect to be, at Nocturne? Are they going because I think they're open? Is it responsible to go? And then, depending on who you're interacting with, how are you going to do that? And then again, that becomes the sustainability of the venue. And then again, there's a mental factor, I believe, with people of a certain age saying, hey, I'm just going to go out and party and go to the club, etc. The same way we're thinking about, are we going to go to restaurants or going to our offices and things like that? We're going to be thinking this is a concern, this is dangerous, probably even more so than the younger adults. So I'm curious. It's like, I feel like we're going to be still at a point, even in 2021, where it's certainly not going to be the same atmosphere. It's not going to be the same environment. And, are we just going to stay virtual? I actually believe that, sort of the virtual events that people might pay for, is something that, might be in line. I mean, I think people might just pay to see if Prince right now were alive and he had a virtual event, we'd be the first ones paying for it. Is that something that we think can pivot to, just some of our friends and colleagues who are DJs full time? Will they have their own event?
I think this is it's a temporary circumstance. I believe that there will be some innovation and evolution that occurs at the end of it. Your time frame, I agree, 2021, there's going to be still a lot of apprehension that exists. But fast forward to, proven vaccines, some herd immunity, 2022, there should be an evolved social culture that we see emerge around how we socialize, publicly, privately, etc. I think the club will still be a staple hub of social interaction, but it will look a little different.
So what about the club and TV? I've seen a few people have talked to me about some concepts where DJs are creating their own sort of channels, etc. I've seen that on a few different things. Club and TV, something else. Jesse Saunders was talking about, one of his colleagues on the East Coast is creating, already has sort of an online radio show, but now they're making it sort of a TV station, maybe, the Hulu, Netflix of house music. Again, I'm all about innovation. We always have to think about the future. Again, so what is the future of the music? What are your thoughts about sort of club and TV, or again, these platforms? And again, that's an interesting concept as an advertising person to me, because clearly if you're going to do something like that, for it to be sustainable, again, sustainability and future is all I'm thinking about today, is, you're going to have to sell, marketing and advertising almost like you would any other time. Hey, Wes.
Wes
Hey,
Green joining us. Come on off mute, Wes, while we're waiting for him to do so. DJ Purple noted that he won't be in clubs in the immediate future because there'll still be the mask requirement, which he's not opposed to, but it'll just feel a bit restrictive. And keeping it on for a sustained amount of time is something that, as a dancer or even DJing, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's totally uncomfortable.
And may not warrant being worth going out.
That's so true. I mean, when I think about it, I'm, do I want to be at the club? I barely want to be at the restaurant or walking around with a mask on. I know it's uncomfortable for everyone. It's critical that we use these measures, as we only have so many measures to try to help us, stay alive. I can't dance in it. I can't run in the mask. Sitting at the restaurant with the thing on the whole time now, because there's a new ordinance about that. I just can't, are we all going to be at the flow with the mask on, and I think if that's what it comes to, that's what it comes to. But so, last time I talked to Louis Green was at the club. Were you at the club, Louis Green? He was at someplace. Where were you when I talked to you last?
I don't remember. I'm gonna plead the fifth on that. I don't know if I was at the club. I don't remember where I was at when you asked me.
You were at club for 43 on 43rd Street in Ellis.
Oh, I think I was at Norm's Bistro.
Norm's Bistro.
So it wasn't a club, but somebody had a little speaker there and they were playing some house music. So when you called, it sounded like I was in the club, but we were outside. We were social distancing. Most of us had on masks. I don't know. Only thing I know for sure is something that my grandmother used to tell me, my great grandmother, and you guys have heard the same thing, right? and this too will pass. So like eventually, you know, COVID-19 will be as common as the flu or something like that. And, you know, we'll build up a tolerance for it. Maybe we'll get vaccinated for it. But people will not be held down. So in my opinion, the parties will return. People will be partying like it's 1999 again. And, you know, people are going to risk it. In my opinion, not right away, hopefully, but eventually it's going to go back to the way it was. And it'll be even probably, you know, a little bit more, the party scene will probably get a little bit more aggressive because people, they want it. You know, we need to be around people. We need to hug people. We need to touch people. We need to see people. And I think this pandemic has kind of given a lot of us a perspective that we haven't had in the past, that, you know, we need each other. You know, I mean, that's a perspective. Like, for me, I've always felt like, oh, I can do this by myself. I can do this by myself. But I don't want to be alone. You know, I don't want to not see my friends. I don't want to not shake somebody's hand. You know, I don't want to be on virtual all the time. You know, I don't want to do this.
This is an important point you make, Louis, because we've been talking about socialization and that need. And so the question comes about, you know, need versus risk and timing. All of these things are factors. And the audience has said, you know, look, we too want to be connected. We want to touch and interact with people. The virtual innovations that have come about are a stopgap measure. Lauren, I think you indicated that you had friends who, I'm assuming you were inferring that their sanity was saved by having the ability to sort of connect and comment and watch and listen virtually because they're social beings. And so we get the need. Clubs provide these venues and opportunities for us. Here in the summer season, or what remains of it, we've had a lot of outdoor opportunities being introduced. And so what happens around, you know, the seasonality, Lauren, you were talking about as we move into fall and winter? Do you guys think that these venues are going to invest, right? Do they even have the capital to invest in either expanding their virtual offerings or expanding their outdoor offerings? Go. You're on mute, Lauren.
You're on mute, Lauren.
It's all right. So I'm wondering about that because, you know, right now, you know, again, I think about sort of a lot of the different industries that are negatively affected. Almost every industry except for the pizza restaurant, the barbecue restaurant, all the medical. You know, some people are doing extremely well in this environment. Other people, other businesses, etc., and services, etc., you know, have to rethink a pivot. If you're already suffering as a club, so if Nocturne then has to do a GoFundMe, then I'm not sure if they have the ability to tent up their backspace or tent up the front to have more people or to heat it up so they're not, you know, people aren't just cuddled up inside. Do these club owners have the ability to have a top of the line ventilation system, etc.? I feel like that's a tough call in a climate where we're already somewhat suffering. And it's not the kind of, you know, sort of these types of venues are not the kind where, you know, the PPP funds or these other grants and fellowships, the banks aren't eager to give you money. You know what I mean? So you could expand or you can do something different with your ventilation systems and things like that, you know, I think we're going to see some fallout. But Louis is absolutely right. We all want to be together. We all want to be together, but then it just becomes, at what point is it safe to do that? Do we think that's 2021 in a climate where our country is extremely divided? And if we don't get a handle on, you know, keeping everyone apart, or if we don't get a handle on attempting to slow this virus, because we really haven't in the United States, maybe some other places have, people are going to continue to get sick. We're not going to see this end because our federal government is not taking a larger stance. We can only do so much in Illinois. Again, COVID doesn't know boundaries, and if we don't set some, it's just going to continue to spread. So, you know, I'm not sure how, you know, at what point we're going to just be rushing back to the place where we can hug each other, whether that's outside or inside. And if you're in New Orleans, you'll survive because you can open up everything and it's warm most of the time. If you're in Florida, you know, maybe you can survive. But in Chicago, I'm curious about the survival of these places. I think we'll go back to a certain point, but what is the fallout? Is that 50% fallout of, you know, not just the club, but the DJs? We haven't even talked about the DJs, because there's some DJs who only spin, only produce, only work in the music business. You know, how then if they've been global travelers, if they were spinning across the world, what are they doing now? Louis, what have you heard about some of the, you know, I know one of your best friends is a world-renowned DJ. You know, what have you heard about how they're pivoting?
So right now, well, what Roy is doing, Roy Davis Jr., he's not traveling, obviously. You know, he's staying at home. He's been very good with his social distancing. He doesn't even let like people come in the house besides, you know, family. What he's doing to generate money, he's producing music. He's doing remixes for big labels, some stuff that you'll probably see coming out pretty soon. You know, and putting out music. And what I found is, and I think a lot of the DJs are finding different avenues to put out music. So more people are going towards Bandcamp. More people are trying to look at how to release music on their own site or something to get a larger share of the money. And people are like revisiting things that they haven't really revisited in a long time. So like a lot of producers, they didn't really care about their publishing and this kind of thing. Like they care now. Like they're, you know, they're filing all their publishing. You know, they're trying to make sure that they're getting paid from BMI, ASCAP, or whoever. They're following up with record companies that don't want money. You know, you haven't paid me for this, you haven't paid me for that. And it's like, you know, a lot of producers that I know, this is the things that they're doing. You know, the problem is the people that they're going to for the money are also having money problems. Yeah, I owe you, but I'm a little short right now, you know. And there's some big name people out there who are trying to collect for some big name people. And those people are like, we're going to have to do a payment plan, you know. So, I mean, but it's just not the same. You know, they're not making the same money they were making. I do know of a DJ producer that's about to take a tour overseas and, you know, like just wear his mask and risk it, you know. I'm not going to say his name because I didn't get clearance to, you know, to do that. But there's some people who they're going to risk it. You know, they're going to.
What about the restrictions? There's travel restrictions on U.S. citizens going to foreign destinations.
I don't know about that part, but I know that this one producer that I know who might be watching tonight, you know, and if he texts me, I'll tell the story. If not, I won't. He's getting a lot of money to go overseas, and hey, you know, he's gonna risk it. You know, me personally, I wouldn't do it. You know, but you know, you're gonna have that. Some people are willing to risk it. And I don't know, will they be able to get back in the country? I have no idea.
Right, exactly. I mean, the airplane global travel seems to me like if you want to see your family again, you God only knows what's going to happen. At first, you can get there and be sidetracked because I have clients and colleagues who travel generally 100% globally. And right now, I had someone whose Italian mother passed, and they went to Italy, and they had issues there. They had issues coming back in. They were sequestered here in the United States for some time before they could even get back to Chicago. So I'm like, that sounds like, again, if people have families or loved ones that they want to see, etc., it seems like that's going to be, a challenge. I don't foresee myself getting on a plane until at least late 2021. Just because I'm afraid. To me, I just don't understand how you wouldn't give one person on that plane has something. I feel like with the air quality and those airplanes, I don't care what you're doing, you're gonna get it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, I hate to be like a worry wart, and I travel for my business too, but I don't even want to travel to Atlanta. I'm not getting on a plane to go anywhere, basically.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The house music genre isn't the only industry affected by this, obviously. Many people, again, have to make the individual choice and weigh risk versus reward. Life is short, as we are all realizing, and I wanted to take a moment also to acknowledge the passing of one of the genre's pioneering spirits, Eric Murillo, who passed recently, was a DJ, remixer, producer, label owner, who really made an impact on the dance music genre, and we've got much respect for Eric. For those watching who may or may not know Eric, from a mainstream perspective, he was the force behind a mainstream adopted dance track called "I'd Like to Move It." Right, an epic song that was included in movie soundtracks and the like, used on commercial music beds and all. So we pay a moment of homage to Eric Murillo here on the Vintage House Show. But getting back to the question of travel and the individual choice we all have to make, right? That it is just that, as long as we continue to have that freedom to do so. And again, you have to either be altruistic and have a concern for others or not. One of the comments recently here talks about the virtualization of the genre and what the ramifications are, particularly with licensing and rights of live performances. As we've all experienced, all of us in this genre, Facebook has been the digital rights management police force, and assaulting, little brutality on our efforts to keep people entertained. But of course, they have a business obligation, right, to the rights holders of the music. And so some comments around that include, will ASCAP and BMI be coming to each individual user, or will Facebook try to strike a deal to allow for the public performance of music over video? Someone else indicated that they are expecting, the live music restrictions. Sarah Stevenson says that they just can't play online anymore, so people will be inclined to go to a club. There's also been the move towards other platforms, which of course will also soon have to follow suit, like Twitch. So there are a lot of ramifications about all of this.
And the great thing is that technology, I mean, we are just phenomenal people across the board. We've been able to pivot in every single way for every, it doesn't make a difference what it is. We recognize now we can work from home. Clearly, you can still spend from home. People are really using whatever it is they can to get the music out. I love that all of a sudden we were using Twitch and people going to different types of platforms. And again, that's why I'm curious about what you think also about Club and TV, or whether or not we are just going to, if people can use their individual YouTube pages or other innovations that are going to come up to play the music and have people pay so they can, sustain themselves to do it. I'm wondering if you, Louis or Kevin, have you given any money to any one of the DJs as they're playing live online? Have you done that personally?
Yes. Not a lot, but I have done it.
Yeah.
And well, I think one of the things you mentioned about the digital rights portion, there are some organizations like maybe Beatport and Defected and such, which they go ahead and pay those licensing fees, and then they do their productions on YouTube or whatever. And you can buy licensing, for your track. So if you're going to play a set, if you want to, you can go out to Harry Fox. You can say, okay, I'm going to play this. I think I'll get like maybe 100 spins of this, maybe 100 spins of that, and you can buy the licensing for it. It gets a little bit pricey if you're going to have a lot of songs in your set, but you could do it. And the Facebook thing, I'm not sure, because I don't think Facebook wants to get in the business of paying out digital rights to people, and which is why they mute your stuff. Twitch the same way. Once everybody knew that they were going to Twitch, Twitch started muting the videos after the fact while it's playing to the play, but after the fact they'll mute you. And it just...
Oh, I didn't know that. So Twitch is muting people?
Yeah, not live, but if you watch their video and they've got digital rights music in their video, then they'll mute it out. So if you go back to listen to it, they'll mute it out. And there's some DJs who like started taking down some of their mixes because of that, because they were like, you listen to it live and then they'll take it down. I think YouTube has a better way of handling it though. But go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think they are doing, partnering with ASCAP and BMI to manage some of the rights and the costs associated with it, and paying those licensing fees. So one of the comments, again, Terrence Stevenson comes back with the fact that Mixcloud allows DJs to spend uninhibited live stream without blocking those streams. So that's a virtual venue for DJs that you don't have to be concerned about.
So what have you heard? Louis, what have you heard about some of the platforms like Club and TV? I've seen that sort of on a Nocturne. Again, other groups looking to do sort of some house music or dance music, sort of television. Sort of, I don't know if it's just going to be sort of virtual or what other kind of television it might be, but have you heard or seen any of that? And what do you think about sort of the sustainability of that, or whether or not that could be successful?
Well, I don't know about Club Nocturne, going to a TV station. I haven't heard about it. They might be doing it. We probably have to ask Ron Carroll that, but I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think the bottom line is this is the new normal, and we're going to have to get used to doing things differently. I talked to some of my coworkers. As you know, Lauren, I work from home, and I've been doing it now for over a decade. And, by day, I'm a cybersecurity engineer. By night, I'm a DJ, producer, or whatever. But so I've been working from home quite some time. When COVID hit, all of my colleagues had to start working from home, and the company I work for is global. And I talked to one of them, and the lady said, well, she's an older woman, and she said she really liked coming in the office. She liked driving to work, meeting the people, talking with people, all of that. And she didn't think she liked working from home. But after she started doing it for a month or two, and she said, you know what? I'm not going back to the office. Like, I don't care what they say, I'll retire. And she's 68, and she's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. She said, I like the fact I don't have to drive to work now. She's like, I'm saving money on gas. I'm saving money on my car insurance. I'm saving money, on food. I'm saving money, and this is like, and then she doesn't have the risk of running into somebody at work that maybe came to work feeling bad. And, then they spread COVID to everybody, because let me tell you, most companies are not going to pay for the type of HVAC system that's going to actually remove viruses and bacteria from the air using UV lights and heating it up and, removing viruses down to 0.001 microns. It's just, they're not going to pay for it. But I think we will see that kind of thing eventually, like in the airports and certain venues. You're almost going to have to, to
New York subway system, UV lights to clean the subways every night.
They're going to need something.
The organization I work for, we actually did install UV capabilities within the ductwork, but wow. It is said that the UV light does not, in that scenario, won't kill the COVID virus. Other germs and bacteria, but not the virus.
Yeah, they've got other systems that they'll superheat the air and, all of that kind of stuff. It's like, layered, but they're expensive, and like, we're going to have to do something because COVID's not going away. Here's a question I have for you guys, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or whatever like that. What is flu season? Did you ever think about that? Like, why does the flu supposedly, not go away, but, and then in flu season, it's like, this is flu season, get your flu shot. What is that? Like, why does that happen? Does anybody ever think about that?
Well, it's defined as that recurring time period where the outbreak of influenza is most prevalent, and it usually occurs during the cold half of the year.
Why is that? Like, what makes it come back more? I mean, you would think you would get the flu more in the summertime.
Because there are more people together. But this one, it's a weird thing. I never understood that either, because they were like, oh, maybe in the summer the COVID will slow down, right, like the flu. And it didn't. That was completely just, again, I always want to be clairvoyant. And so I like making these predictions. I want to listen to this show in another 6 months and see what's happening with the world. But, back in March, they were like, oh, it'll slow down and then pick back up again in September. Well, it's on a big fat roll right now. And I think I'm thinking in Chicago, when it gets colder, just like it was in March and April, it was colder. We were inside more and we didn't spread it more. So we'll see. But if we decide now we're going to go to the club, bringing it back to house music because it's cold out, maybe there's less people in the club. I still think we're still going to be super spreading to each other. It's a hard thing to figure out. I don't know what this virus is going to do. The flu, I've never gotten a flu shot in my life. Have you all gotten flu shots? Do you all do the flu shots?
Never.
I recently started getting the flu shot. Last season was my second season getting a flu shot. I was vehemently opposed to injecting the dead antibodies or whatever into my body, and
the Tamiflu and whatever else they put in there.
Right, whatever else. And so I started trying it because I work the same environment that I indicated. I installed the UV lighting, and that environment is a highly, the ventilation system basically sucks in this building. It's a River North commercial building, and an old loft space where they, installed ductwork, and
They
there's
definitely
no
clean
open
those.
air that comes in. You can't open windows in it, and so the same air circulates over and over. And when someone comes into that facility with any kind of virus, everyone gets it. And I'm like, F that. I'm not gonna subject myself. So I started getting the shot, and at least I was usually the last person standing before catching some diluted version of a cold or flu.
But
Eric Eastmove Miller and Jesse Saunders have joined the conversation. Eric cites the instance that there was one unprotected wedding that generated 140 cases and a COVID-related death in the state of Maine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I think I saw something about that online,
That is nuts. So I feel like we're gonna, if we bring it back to, as we end the show, as we try to tail it off, I think about, again, the sustainability of the club. But if we think about, if we look at a little bit of history, as we're doing with the Chicago Black Social Culture Map, we're looking at social venues of people of African descent, where they went to in Chicago. We just look back in 20 years and what happened to Kaboom, what happened to, we can go on and on. The great little clubs and big clubs, they all sort of came and went for whatever the reasons were, for whatever those reasons are. Now we have a major pandemic. How is everyone going to survive sort of this situation, and how do we pivot? I mean, back in the day, if you think of E2 used to be like 9,000 other, event venues. You know what I mean? It was like E2, it was this, it was that, it's like, do you have to continue to sort of evolve and close and then reopen in another way? Is that the best way to sort of move through this period, sort of recognizing that these venues do come and go and they evolved, and, new things will come up in the same space.
Yeah, and I would even categorize the Epitome venue as in a class all by itself. I mean, that place, I would imagine, is just haunted. It's never been occupied since that tragedy. And I used to drive by it every day on my way to work. And, the facility's been up for sale and off the market and back on the market right now.
Well, the reason why is not because it honestly, everything that was in there and the exact way it looked when those people died, it looks the exact same way. They've done nothing differently to it. I've been in there several times, not only showing clients, but at one point looking to represent the space, and it was eerie. You're like, okay, has anyone moved anything? It was alarming. It was just like, you could, anyway. That was crazy. You know what? Someone asked us to really sort of give some love to people like Alan and Vince, who continue to spin and innovate during this time. Who were some of the great, some of the people who you listened to during this time, Louis and Kevin? Who are some of the DJs or just events or things that happened around music that kept you going through the pandemic?
Well, I listened to my Soul and Angel A have a thing called Good Friday, where they do like a spiritual thing every Friday. So I listen to them pretty regularly. I listen to Alan King pretty regularly. And I like the fact that Alan does like those 3-4 hour sets, sometimes 5 hour sets. Like, he just goes in. And, I told Alan a long time ago, he's probably my favorite DJ, because he plays all the soulful stuff. And that's what I like, even though, that's not the kind of music I started making back in the day, but I love the soulful stuff. Who else I listen to? Critically Massive, Randall Dean has his show, and he's got a bunch of different DJs on there all the time. So I kind of like that. And that's about it. There's a lot of DJs that's coming on all the time. And, I kind of pick my few that I support. I can't watch everybody. I don't have that type of time.
Yeah, well, for me, certainly Friends of the Vintage House Show
And
get
Lori Branch too. Sorry.
yeah.
I watch her also. I'm sorry.
They get top billing, top priority on my watch list. Certainly, as you just shared, fellow co-host DJ Lori Branch, Alan King, Terry Hunter, DJ Immaculate, Stacy Kidd has one of the most prolific shows. This guy will go in costume as a superhero when he plays his techno sets, and he's into it. DJ Purple, Reggie Davenport, he found a nice niche in the mornings to do his shows. I've been able to tune in to the Get Down, to a variety of artists and DJs there. DJ Alicia, and the list goes on. Vince Adams, Ryan Carroll, a lot of these people. I haven't been able to be a consistent follower, but I've certainly tuned in to many instances of these shows and appreciate.
I'm wondering if we're gonna, again, are we getting a little exhausted from sort of all the virtual things? I think we all want to hug each other, and there's so many things competing with each other now. At one point, it was just like, hey, so-and-so's going to be on Saturday, but now there's like 5 people on Saturday at 10 o'clock, and all of a sudden it becomes, we don't know who to turn into. Who do we go to? Louis Vega would always pop in on my screen at noon every day, and I started looking at it for a little bit. And the next thing you know, something else has popped in. I'm like, oh dang, what was that? Let me check that out. I mean, there was always so many things, especially with the D Nice and Questlove. All those things were happening at the same times, and then of course, the Chicago house music groups were around at the same time. It was like it just became a lot, and you wondered again, are we going to continue to do this and look at it, or at what point do we tune out, or do we?
Well, I mean, choice is a wonderful thing, right? We started with 3 TV broadcast networks, and then with the explosion of cable, and now we're in a 4th iteration of viewing, or even 5th, you might call it, where streaming is the option that everyone has to consume video and audio content along with podcasting. And so there's no shortage of entertainment. That is the good news. It is how you then maximize and optimize your time.
Yes.
What a great point. What a great point that is. And so I'm really looking forward to understanding the next iteration of how we are consuming this music. This has really taught us a lot about our ability to just go to the club or just do one thing or the other. I feel like I'm really looking forward to seeing if this sort of house music TV, either remote, online, whatever, if that takes off, because I think there's some viability to that. And the same way you all have suggested that you all have paid to hook up some of the DJs as they're spinning and making us happy. Do I think I will find some dough for the club and TV or go to the club TV flow? I think I would. I feel like I would actually spend, if you had to pay to be on club TV something and so-and-so was spinning on it and you couldn't see him for free, I'd spend the money, I think. I feel
where else are we spending money these days, right? If you're inside, not a lot of places.
Right. I think the DJs that learn how to master the technology are going to be the ones who win. And what I mean by that is like the Twitch platform, for example. I'm into chess as well as music, but the chess people who do Twitch know how to do Twitch. So if you go out there and watch them playing a chess game, people are donating money the whole time. They're sending you bits. They're sending you donations. They're subscribing to your channel for $5 a month or whatever. They're subscribing for other people. Hiro Nakamura might get like 150,000 subscriptions a month at like $5 a piece. So some people have learned how to actually take these platforms and monetize them. us in the house industry, we don't do that. I don't see like DJ Immaculate, for example, set up to take donations. I don't see Alan King set up to take donations. Now, obviously, everybody doesn't want to take donations either. Some people, that's not their thing. They just want to do the music and they enjoy sharing it. But I think the DJs who really learn how to use these different platforms, monetize it, and get things set up properly, they're going to win. They're going to make money, and they're going to, be around to do it.
So there's an interesting point that Reggie has been making. He suggests that there may be a resurgence around radio as a result of COVID, which would be the opposite of what you're indicating, Louis, because radio is another broadcast medium that relies on advertising and not necessarily the real-time direct to the content creator payment path.
Yeah, I disagree. I think radio is good. It's a medium that's here, but I think technology has proven to me that we move forward, and people are more savvy now. They're using their phones, they're on the internet, and they're on Facebook and Instagram, and people sending links to the platforms where they can control their media and monetize their fans. And you're not going to just be able to do that on the radio. So, and the radio only has so many slots that they can have. So if you're talking about internet radio, then okay. But if you're just talking about like WGCI or whoever else, I disagree.
Well, the great thing about radio is that it has proven its sustainability over the last, 60, 80, 100 years or so. I think we thought there's a whole song about, we thought the video would kill the radio. I think they thought television would kill the radio. There are so many things over the last 80 years that said that the radio could never survive, right? Well, even our cell phones right now are set up to get the radio stations. Right now, we can tell Siri and we can tell Alexa all day to put on this radio station. So somehow some things survive, but technology is the same way. I mean, we have to see if Hulu and Netflix are going to survive all these different things. Jesse suggesting that internet radio numbers are up dramatically. I think there's going to be so many innovative technology things. Jesse, talk to me about that. You were talking about someone who's got a platform where you're going to have a digital sort of TV for house music or for DJs. I'd love to learn more about that, because I feel like that could be the future of making money digitally, virtually, around the music. I feel really good about that, and I would pay for it.
Yeah, and so radio has evolved, right? And I think that's the point. It hasn't fully evolved to what you're describing, Louis, as it's not as technologically sophisticated as some of these other platforms, but it is clearly evolving and morphing, and it is here to stay, it seems.
Yeah, I'm not saying that radio won't survive, but what I am saying is I don't think radio will become the de facto platform unless you're talking about internet radio or something of that nature. I don't think people are going to go back to radio. I think radio is what it is. And, the viewer, the listeners and such that they have are good. They might get some bump in numbers, but I think more and more people are going to go towards internet radio and try to control their own destiny instead of waiting for, some radio station program manager to say, hey, I want to bring on Jesse Saunders. I want to bring on Terry Hunter or, whoever. I think they're going to try to control their own destiny. I mean, this is what people have been doing recently since COVID. And the longer it goes, more people are going to try to get into that because they see that, what other option do you really have? So it's like, you're either going to go the way of the dodo or you're going to survive. You just got to pick. What do you want to do? You want to survive? Or do you want to be one of those businesses that close?
Yeah. No question. There are choices to be had, choices to be made. One thing's for sure, count on the Vintage House Show to be here for you, to bring you the history of house music, the history of the business of house music, and certainly the stories of the pioneers, the emerging artists, the producers, promoters, remixers, the tech leaders of this genre. We bring it all to you here. We are the Vintage House Show. We're missing our co-host, Lori Branch, tonight, and we send her thoughts and prayers as she wasn't able to join us tonight, and hope that she's all good and well. Lauren?
I want to thank Louis Green for joining us today.
Absolutely.
So, Kevin,
Louis, I want to thank you for helping capture one of what I have as one of my top shows, which was the DJ Legends of U of I show, and Chris 1028 video. I treasure that and share that with all those folks who participated. So I thank you again for that.
So I consider Louis a part of our family.
Absolutely.
Louis was there for probably our second show we ever did. He probably doesn't recognize it, but our second show, we had Kurt Townsend interviewed Wayne and Jesse, and I had Louis come up and he videotaped it for us. So he's been there from the very beginning. And he recently told me this really great story that really, really solidified his participation as a family member in the Vintage House Show. I'm not going to say any names, Louis, but he got phone calls after one of our shows. You know, someone angry about some comments that he didn't even make. He just happened to be there in the background, and probably almost right away after doing the show, I would always get phone calls. Well, how come you didn't say this? And how come, and why wasn't I on the show? And this and that. And I was like, and so Louis calls, he says, so-and-so called me angry. I was like, oh, you just part of the family. Nah, you getting cursed out for no reason.
I got cursed out.
For no reason.
I got cursed out. And I mean, we went at it. And this is my boy from 16 years old. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen to the video. Listen to the video. You know what you did? You know what you said? I'm like, I didn't say nothing. You did. Listen to the video. I said, tell me what I said. I was like, we were going at it, come to find out, I didn't say nothing. I just kind of laughed, because I knew that the guy on the air said something that was going to piss off my boy. And when he saw it, it was going to be a problem. And so when he said that, I made a face like, uh-oh. And I kind of laughed. And I looked at you, Lauren. And so the people who saw me, because it was Craig Loftus, I think, had his phone up. And he had it on Facebook Live. So the angle was at me. But they couldn't see probably who all was around me and why I was smiling or why, because we were all looking at each other laughing and stuff like that, but they couldn't see everybody. So it just looked like I was siding with somebody, and it was a real problem.
It's all right, your family, and because the Vintage House Show is not without controversy, it's par for the course.
It is.
Wait, to that point, if I remember, Lauren, you told me that there was some controversy on who was even going to do that show because nobody wanted to take the heat.
Oh, I have to tell you.
Nobody wanted to take the heat.
We're all in all the time.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was Kevin's show. He didn't want to be there.
I was like, I don't want to do this. They don't bad at me.
And the person who caught the brunt of it was Louis Green. So Louis Green. Thank you.
I took the heat for everybody, Kevin. I took the heat for you, man. Trust me.
You are a trooper, and like I said, I appreciate you. No question about it.
Crazy cow. It's true.
Yeah.
I took it for you.
So we're here every Wednesday night on Facebook Live, the Vintage House on WNUR 89.3 page. Like us there. You can also check us out on YouTube at the DJchannel.com, DOTCOM. Twitch, Philosophical Grooves page. I am DJ Mega. And if Lauren is on hosting, you can check it out on her page, as well as the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving page. Again, we are Vintage House, powered by the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation. I'm your main man, Mega, our co-founder of the association, Lauren Lowry. We are out for tonight, but please join us again next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central Time, for another episode of Vintage House.
And a new fall we've got a lot of great things happening for fall. So stay tuned throughout this week to learn about what's happening after Labor Day at Vintage House.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Stay well, stay safe, mask up.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Louie.
All right, take it easy.